Okay, so just a quick video on some recessed ground lights that I'm installing into a patio, so into a concrete or porcelain patio. So you've got to be conscious, in the UK we get quite a lot of rain at certain parts of the year, so there's a certain level of planning that needs to go into it. And I'm doing this with the Knightbridge series. There's a number of different products they've got. I went with this one for a couple of reasons. It's not hugely expensive. You can get it for about £25 plus VAT, and I'm running 8 of them, so you know, sky's the limit when it comes to cost and what you want to spend. But this one was quite affordable. Knightbridge products are pretty good in the sense that they don't break the bank, and they're pretty good quality in my opinion. And this is quite a low profile one, so in terms of where it's going into my patio, it's not entirely too deep in there, and some of them are quite big. I didn't want small lights either as well, and you can see there's quite a big unit in terms of how wide it is here, so that's good. This is the warm light as opposed to the white light option. So I'm just going to talk you through how I'm planning to do this, and I'm yet to assess whether or not it's going to be a royal success or a royal failure. But let me talk you through some of the planning phases I've done around this product, and give you maybe some guidance if you're thinking about doing something similar yourself. So first things first, it comes with this cable that's built in already. So this is actually fused, and I wouldn't recommend playing around with that engine. You get a decent amount of flex on it, about 2 meters worth of flex on there that you got, or just under 2 meters I'd say. You get your box, and here's your sort of sheet that comes with it. There's a PDF that's available on the website that has a lot of this documentation on it. One of the things I would say about the one that I've gone for, it is slightly larger. It's got these Allen key fixings in there to replace the housing. Now, I wasn't particularly keen on that. If you look at the Knightbridge catalogue, they do some other ones that don't have that fitting on it, but they tended to be actually quite expensive. So I'm just conscious, again, with moisture and moss and algae and stuff that will get in, and dirt and dust. I'd rather have not had those, but these ones here were slightly more expensive without the sort of Allen key fitting on the top. So I didn't go for those, and I can live with it, quite frankly, and just keep it clean with the pressure washer, so on and so forth. This diagram here is representative of the planning you need to put into it, and I'm going to show you what I've done to try to accommodate this. So if it was going into decking, the water would have enough of a funnel to move away to. The problem with the patio is that you're going to get build up underneath the material, so you need to make sure there's enough drainage in the system to allow the cables not to be just sitting in a puddle of water for long periods of time. So it says it needs to have a drainage required in the aperture, and that needs to drain out within a half-an-hour window if it's a certain degree of water. So download the PDF and read it for yourself, and make sure you're comfortable with it. You can see there's some pea shingle on this as well, which I'm planning to put in for my one. So again, on a decking you'd be okay, but in concrete patio, a little bit of planning is needed. Okay. So this is the cable I'm actually going to run under the patio. This is MYY, or otherwise known as high tough cable. I've gone for 1.5mm 3-core, and I needed about 100 meters of this. I actually needed less, but I bought a drum of it because it was cheaper. So the cable itself is pretty flexible. Now, if you went for standard steel wired armoured or SWA, what you'd find is the fitting you're going to try and put into the housing is going to be really tough. Okay, so this is quite nice because it is bendable. You're not really supposed to bury MYY cable, but because it's going to the patio, there'll be no movement. So I was assured by the vendors that it can go under a patio quite happily, and it won't have too much trauma there to it. So I've made that decision. Now, I did put some piping in to protect it in certain areas where it's gone in, and you can see here what I've done is I've brought up all of my cables from the patio, which I'll show you in just a second. I've brought them under. I had to dig this trench through. I've brought them all up into where I'm going to house my fuse board and my sockets, and these are going to come into a whisker box just over to the right. So I've brought them all up, and I've got enough flex in there that I can whisker those off into a separate module later on. So 1.5mm MYY cable is what I've gone for, and again, you've got a certain level of flexibility there to navigate trying to connect that up to the prefixed wire on the back of the lighting. Okay. So one of the things you probably want to try in advance is making sure the hole you're going to cut on your stonework is the right size for the light, and that's needless to say, that's diligent planning. So in the documentation for the Knightbridge light, it says there's a couple of options you've got here. It says with the mounting sleeve 78mm and without the mounting sleeve. Now I've not done this before, I've never cut into a tile myself before, so this was all quite new for me. So I went to Screwfix and I found a 78mm diameter stone cutting drill bit. I did struggle with this, and maybe you're watching this video, it's not really relevant to the lighting, but you need an arbor for this, which I didn't realise. I didn't even know what an arbor was beforehand, but that needs to go in there, and then inside that arbor there's another drill bit that goes down, because there's no centering tool on the end of this, so you're just wobbling all over the place. It took me a while to get used to it. So unless you're paying a company that's doing this stuff for you, of course you need the right drill bit, and obviously somebody that knows how to do it, to facilitate the aperture required for your light. Now the way I interpret this is we're going to use the mounting sleeve because we want ours to be watertight. If it was going into decking, you could do it without, and you could just go in a 61mm. So whichever light you buy from Knightbridge or whichever company you're organising, they'll probably have two different options for you. So we're going for the 78mm. What I've noticed with that is that it's actually slightly got a little bit of give to it, so you can see it wobbles around a bit. If I just take that out for a moment, what you'll see is it's actually to this diameter here. So when you go in, you're like, hey, I've got loads of space, but actually when it sits on top, it's about snug there. It's about snug, you know, where it sits, but it still is a little bit loose. But you know, you put some silicone in there or something like that to stop it, and that'll give it some protection. I'm just following exactly the manual what it says for the size that's required, and it might not look like the mounting. That's the mounting sleeve that goes around the side. That can come off if you want. You can take that off, but I'm keeping it on for my one. The other thing to bear in mind, this goes back to what I just said a moment ago, is my hands can fit in this, so you can do some work, but you know, splicing or joining any cables is going to be really tricky. So it's really important that the cable you're presenting this out of the ground, you've got enough flex in it that you can join the two together, because if you don't do that, you're going to be really struggling to do the sort of the delicate work around there in terms of how that comes together. So just bear that in mind as well, and you want to make sure that flex is de-sheathed on the end. This is nice and flexible, the other cable isn't. They need to be able to tuck in there and have enough depth that the whole of this can go in and fit into the sort of that square that I made up beforehand, which I'm yet to decide whether or not that's the way to go, but we'll find out once I've finished off doing this project. So let's slot him back in there, see how that looks. We'll see, just needs a little bit of a sit down, so see, that's not very good. I think it's just where I've got the cable tacking around. I'm going to just take the flex out. There we go, it drops down nicely. So yeah, hopefully when, and again, you'll look at this and get, hey, it doesn't even got the hole centered. It was because this was my demo. I've got a few spare slabs. This is one I tried before, and it was so hard to get this into a point where it was actually locked, and it's because I hadn't had enough experience with using one of these before with the point that goes down to fix it. So that was new for me, but hopefully this video is not about using these. The video is about installing this correctly. So there's my landscape in terms of where this is all going. I have 3 lights on the outside of here, another 3 lights down that perimeter, and then one in the middle of each. So you can see over here what I've got. There's our I don't know what you want to call it, reservoir that I've built, the opposite of reservoir, because I don't want it to collect water. But you know, I need to make sure that this is de-sheathed at the point where it comes out the ground, and this will be lowered down now because I have pea shingle. It'll be presented up, so there's enough flex there for the surface of this to ensure that you can join and stuff it back in the ground afterwards. Okay, so that's the key thing. Is I was worried at first I cut these too short, but they're probably about right. I mean, this won't all be here, it'll be trimmed back once it's connected. So that's the important thing. And again, quite cheap stonework I've gone for. This is actually quite nice to cut through. Even for an amateur like myself, if it was porcelain, it could have been a completely different situation. I've just gone for stone concrete because this is going to have a swimming pool on top of it, so I don't really want to spend too much money on nice tiles, which you're not going to see ultimately. And this is quite grippy as well. So you can just see on the profile there, it's quite gritty. It's quite gritty, so children running on this with their bare feet will be nice. Just hopefully they don't fall over on it. And I think this one here is going to be a problem for me. I think this one's probably the shortest one I've got. It's not too bad. I've got enough flex on the top of that from above the draw line. That should be good. Again, this one here looks a bit tight, I think. I'm going to struggle with that one. Pull some more through, hopefully. But yeah, we'll figure out how it goes. We'll figure it out. So there we go. So next part of the project, and I'll keep you updated. Okay, so slight change of plan, and many of you might be looking at this thinking, why on earth didn't he think of this any sooner? But I struggled with the concrete reservoir we were going to create, and what I've done instead, in terms of making this a bit more efficient, I've actually got myself some 5-inch pipe, and I've machined a hole into it, and that's going to sit actually in this aperture. It's going to allow enough of the sheath to go through that hole that I've drilled. It's a 12mm hole, so I'm going to leave that to the side, and I've got some sharp sand. So the sharp sand is going to allow me to essentially toss some of this into the base. I'll just scoop some of this up now and toss it into the bottom. So I've got sharp sand at the bottom, and I'll probably top that with pea shingle. But the idea here is with the sharp sand that I'm going to toss in there, I'm going to be able to put my 5-inch waste pipe in there, shove that down, poke the cable through it, and then what I've done is actually erected a small little contraption here that allows me to level up on the tiles, and actually that makes sure that the top of my 5-inch pipe comes exactly to this. So when my slab goes on, the base of the slab will meet this, and I'll put some silicone around the top of this just to smooth it out, and that will sit nicely with the slab on top of it. And because I've got sharp sand in there, it means that if there's any give, it can be pushed down a little bit further. And then what I'll do after that is I'll fill it up with some pea shingle. But that essentially means this guy here in the middle is going to be completely free of any material hanging around him. These cables will be exposed inside the piping, and then when I connect up the lights, I'll be able to look through my hole cut slab, and I'll be able to look straight down into this. I've marked out on my tiles where the middle is, because I want to make sure that when I put my tube in, it needs to go completely plumb center. So what with it being 5-inch and that being way less than 5-inch, I've got a bit of give, but still want to make sure that's central. So slight change of plan. I'm going to knock out the other one that I created earlier, and then I'll fill this with some ballast, and it'll be nice and secure. Okay, so this is my ducting, nice and clean. They're about a foot deep, each of these, there or thereabouts, depending on how low I've got on the hole. So I've got my entry hole for the cable, which is actually 16mm, funny enough, not 12mm like I said earlier. And then at the bottom where it's going to drop into the sand, I've just drilled some 12mm holes. So as that sits on that bed of sand, if water does get into the top of this for any reason, it's going to get down to the bottom. It's going to meet the sharp sand and the shingle, and it's going to just drain away quite nicely. So nice and easy. Drop that in there, pop my sand in, cut my cable, leave it hang out the top, put the tile on, add some sealant. Job's a good one. Okay, so I'm on my penultimate one now, and this is probably a good one to do because it's surrounded by all the other slabs minus the perimeter. So you can see here I've marked out my midpoint on each of the opposing slabs, a bit like playing a game of Minesweeper. And then I've got, I don't know what I want to call the device, but this measure that allows me to work out exactly the depth that I need to go to against this. So we're nearly there now. The other ones have been laid out, boxes are all in. I should call them light tubes, not light boxes. But this one needs to be dug out now, so I'll let you know how that one goes. This should be an easy one to go to. I've got to take the pins out. Once I get that down, get my tube in, get my shingle in, and then we're good to rock and roll for the last one. So I've dug this one out now, and actually this one came out a lot easier than the other one, so it's a good one to show you as an example. Here's my tubing, my 5-inch pipe. I'm going to plonk that in there just as a gauge to see where I'm at, and then once I've got that on there, I'm just going to put my my thingy-mabob, I'll call it, on top of that across the markings, so I know it's exactly on point. And you can see then how close that is to being dead level. Now I could put like a gauge in the middle, like a bamboo stick, or just a stick or some sort of plastic to work out if it's central. Now there you can see there, even though it looks central, when you go over it, it isn't. So it's really important to then bring that in line with where you want it to be, because if I put my slab on top of that, I'm not going to come central towards it. And if you look at where that is there with my marking, just there, I want to bring that central with it, make sure he's level. There's no slab for me to come up to here, but you know, you can pretty much work out when that's parallel. So I need to bring that over. Now I can
dig the hole over a bit, or I can tilt it. If I tilt it, I won't have a level towards it. So I'll dig the hole over a bit, fill it up with shingle, and actually the range at which I want to fill the shingle up to is about an inch, I'd say. And then that will allow this to come up to the base of the slab. So that's where I need to be now. A little bit of extra work. Plonk that one in there, fill in with shingle in the middle, sheath my cable, fill the shingle around the side, cover him up, slab on later on tomorrow. All done. So there we go. I think you get the point of this now. My level's on there, make it nice and square. That brings me to completely over on that axis, and then if I put him on this guy here, I've been able to just, whilst it's in the shingle, I can engineer that to be in the right position. And then if that's correct, then obviously when you look down on it, you know, you can just make sure that he is there or thereabouts where you need him to be. And you know, the shingle's up to where those little drain holes are, pipes in the right way around, of course, and then as you see fit, you know, just add in, you know, as much shingle as you think is necessary to give it some stability and obviously some drainage. And I'll probably fill the rest of that up with some ballast, and there's enough movement in there. I'm probably gonna make it a little bit prouder so that when the tile goes in it, we can mallet that down and it'll just push it down and put some sealant around the top. And then my cable's nice and protected there, well away from the shingle. Put some sealant around that as well. And we're pretty much good to rock and roll. So getting a bit dark now, but hopefully you can see this. What I've done is use a small amount of clear sealant, which is rated on plastics and PP materials, so you can use it on cables and stuff. And I've just coated, because I'm cheaping out by not using any shark joints. What I've done is tape the sheath where it's cut on the high tough cable, and where the dielectric is showing, what I've done is I've taken that sheathing off, taped it up, and then just absolutely coated it with a load of clear sealant. So that gives those cables, even though it's a bit messy, that gives those cables, you know, completely, if any water does get in there, it will touch the MRY cable, which is waterproof, but it won't get into the joint there. So it's protected from any ingress protection. And I've also put a generous dollop on where the cable comes into the box as well. So a bit of a cheap way of doing it. I'm not investing in those shark joints. They're just way too expensive, and they're a bit meticulous to get into the boxes as well. So I've done every single one now, apart from one of them I've got a problem with. And yeah, hopefully that'll give us the protection, but time will tell. So this is pretty much it, the penultimate stage now. This is the product, the Knightbridge LED light that's connected up now. I've connected up with the rest of the matrix in there, and they're all independent. There's no circuit here. They all go back to the feed box, which I've terminated over there into a little whisker. And then you can see where I've got enough of an aperture down here now with the piping that allows the water to run through. I filled that up the other day just to make sure it does drain through. I was there for quite a while with a hose and it just easily goes through. So everything's now connected up nicely. If I plonk him into the housing, which is all good, the last stage for me is just to probably put some PVA around the this is quite a stony, it's not a very good description, but quite it's got quite a lot of material on the surface of it, but I'll put PVA around that and then fill it with sealant. But you can see it's a nice flush finish, and then I've got my remote switch that plugged in, and that turns on the entire matrix, which is really handy. So really handy, inexpensive stuff, just with an IR sensor on it. You can get these from Amazon pretty cheap. So you know, and this controls it way from the, you know, garden's pretty big, but you know, this goes well into the house and to the front of the house. So yeah, highly recommend it. Obviously I need to give it a few weeks now to see how they get on, but all of the lights came on first time round from Knightbridge, purchased from AEW in Byfleet in Surrey. And if you need any more information on them, I'd highly recommend you speak to those guys, and they can certainly help you. And hopefully that was a helpful demonstration on how to get a Knightbridge LED light housed safely, waterproof, watertight, into a concrete patio.